Close your eyes. Listen to Monday.com. Feel the sensation of an AI work platform. So flexible and intuitive, it feels like it was built just for you. Now open your eyes, go to Monday.com, start for free, and finally breathe.
A mochi moment from Mark, who writes, I just want to thank you for making GLP-1s affordable. What would have been over $1,000 a month is just $99 a month with Mochi. Money shouldn't be a barrier to healthy weight. 3 months in, and I have smaller jeans and a bigger wallet. You're the best. Thanks, Mark. I'm Myra Ahmed, founder of Mochi Health. To find your Mochi moment, visit joinmochi.com.
Mark is a Mochi member compensated for his story.
Welcome back to another episode of Investies. I'm your host, Linda Garcia, Texas State Representative and author of the book Wealth Warrior. Investee, I am recording the introduction to this episode Friday the 13th in the morning, and I have to tell you, the market is acting extremely strange. Yesterday, Thursday, February 12th, we took a pretty significant leg down. I mean, we dropped a lot. And I could not figure out what was going on with the market, what the catalyst was for such a significant drop. Usually, I've been watching the stock market for so many years. I know what to look for. I know what to pay attention to. And typically, I have several strong theories for a catalyst when the market is going up, when the market is going down. I cannot identify what the catalyst is. It's driving me a little crazy. We received inflation data today, this morning. Inflation data came in better than expected. I thought yesterday maybe the stock market is dropping because the whales, the ones that move big money, already have insight on CPI, on inflation data. Today, we received that data. It came in better than expected, as I just mentioned. We have inflation 2.4% year over year. Now, we haven't seen that number since May. It had been trickling up since then. And so to have a 2.4 is relatively positive news. However, this morning, the stock market has taken a sharp turn down. I still can't identify the catalyst. It certainly feels like it's something a lot bigger than me that clearly we don't have insight to. I'm not going to lie, it is making me a little worried. Usually I'm excited when the market is going down, but that's typically because I understand what the catalysts are moving the market. Not knowing what the catalyst is making me a little uneasy, especially because there's so many things going on a macro level in this country that, I don't know, I'm not feeling too good about the market. We'll see how this all shakes out. You'll be listening to this episode on Tuesday of next week. So maybe by then we would have already had an answer. I wanted to give you those quick updates on the stock market. We did have a job report that came out earlier in the week. That job report was much more positive than expected, especially because there were so many other job reports, private job reports, not from the government, that came out that were extremely negative. So, that normally would be a positive catalyst for the stock market. I don't know what's going on. We have treasury yields that are currently tanking right now. I mean, the 30-year treasury yield is down 4.7%. I don't know. Something is weird. I don't mean to be an alarmist. You will be listening to this next week, and hopefully we will have answers then. This week on the podcast, we have a very special guest. We have Eliza Smith, who is the CEO of Cosmic Standard. She is also the creative director. For those of you that have been listening to Investies, you are already familiar with Eliza. We haven't spoken to her ever since We were dealing with redistricting and gerrymandering in the state of Texas. We're going to start trickling in conversations pertaining to politics. Politics does, in fact, impact severely, we know. And I think with this administration, more than any other administration I've seen since I've been paying attention, impacts the economy overall. So I think it's really important that I be responsible with the platforms that I have, and when it feels right, discuss politics. And so we're going to have a little catch-up session today. And then I wanted to share that here on Investies podcast, we are going to have some elected officials join us on the podcast. I really want to, I don't know if normalize is the proper word, but I want to introduce you all to elected officials and their personal journey entering office. This is something that is really important to me, especially as I move through this space and hopefully encourage other people to become more civically engaged, hopefully run for something. We need more of us running for things. Okay, this is so important. We have crazies right now in charge. And this idea of an elected official being some unobtainable position of perfection is just not real. And we're looking for people like you to run in office. And so I want to have really candid, open, friendly conversations with electeds. I want to be as responsible as I can with my platform, most especially as we head into midterms. And these midterms are going to be some of the most important midterms of our lives. Enjoy this episode with Eliza.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
So, Linda, the first time you and I ever spoke on Investies, we talked about how you and other Texas House Democrats were leaving the state to stop the vote on statewide gerrymandering. And a fair amount of time has passed. How have things changed in Texas since the Republican majority voted in these new maps?
Well, things have definitely gotten more intense as we're witnessing across the country just with ICE. And so on top of, that fight, it feels like we're fighting in all kinds of different directions. It's almost really hard to pay attention or have a movement towards one thing. But what I will say, at the core of everything, I definitely feel like the voter is changing. And that is what matters. That is what carries weight. That is what is important.
In your opinion, how have the voters changed?
Well, I think we have a really important case study that is taking place here in Texas, not far from me. It is in Dallas-Fort Worth. And it's a case study that I feel like everyone is paying attention to nationally. It's a really important one that I really want to share with you and our listeners. So this is a seat for Senate seat District 9. It was a special election, which just means that the two opponents went into a runoff. Even in the runoff, the Democrat got more votes than the Republicans. But because it was so close, they went into a runoff. We had a special election. The two candidates are Taylor Remitt and Lee Wamsgone. So they're running for the Senate seat, right, at a federal level. And Taylor, I want to talk about Taylor because this is so important for us to really focus on. Taylor is working class. He's not a politician at all. Blue collar. He's president of the union that he is a part of. just a complete normal guy. Airplane mechanic, he was a veteran. He went up against a conservative Christian. She played a key role in a lot of culture wars in their area. And she was also part of a group that disrupted the school districts in splitting school districts. So complete different candidates, both white. He raised $242,000 on his own. Okay, she raised $2.4 million. The PACs came in and dumped money on the race. A total spent for his race was $1.7 million. A total spent for her race was $19 million. She had Trump's endorsement, Governor Abbott talking about her, the lieutenant governor talking about her. And again, we have Remit, who had Crockett talking about him, Tallarico talking about him, one of the Castro brothers talking about him, but only 1.7 million. He beats her by 15 points.
In a deep red district.
In a deep red district that hasn't elected a Democratic candidate in over 3 decades for this specific seat.
Wow.
We're talking about a place where it's like the big rodeo place of America, stockyards. I mean, we have generations, like 3-4 generation Latino folks living there. This isn't like new emerging Latinos. This is like rooted in Texas. Now, here's the part that just blows my mind. The Latino vote in Latino precincts, which is a smaller area than, it's like the smallest geographical location that is political. That's the best way I can describe it. But in the Latino precincts, Latino vote swung by 51% from a year ago. Exactly.
Whoa.
And here's the thing. So 29% of the district is Hispanic. 80% voted for the Dem, voted for Taylor Remit. This is a 26% increase from 2 years ago. You're looking at an area, actually, you're looking at a state that voted for Trump 55%. We're talking about specifically about the Latino vote. 55% of Latinos voted for Trump. So now you have this entire population that within this election is proving to be a swing voter. And this is something that I have been talking about for a long time. I think that Republicans really thought that Latinos were going to now be Republican. And that's not the case. I never saw that being the case. I think we definitely vote kitchen table economics. Are we more conservative in the sense of religion? Yes. Family? Yes. But at the core of what we want to see is a better life. That's why we came to this country, for a better life. And that is what drives the majority of the vote. So we have the gerrymandering. Last time we spoke, this was the biggest topic, and we talked about the potential of this being a demymandering. What we are seeing, as I just mentioned, Eliza, is that we have the Latino population that is proving to be a swing voter. And so we can potentially be looking at a demymandering where...
What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so gerrymandering, changing the districts to look a specific way, mostly Republicans, where the Republican vote is more powerful than the Democratic vote. But in the gerrymandering, they took into consideration that Latinos were voting Republican. So they were using those Republican Latinos as part of the vote to gerrymander and strengthen their districts. That looks like it can potentially backfire, because we saw 51-point swing for Latino voters in this Tarrant County election, proving that Latinos are in fact swing voters. I have worked in advertising. I worked in advertising for 17 years, movie, television, and radio. And one of my biggest frustrations was the lack of investment towards Latinos. We were always being ignored. And when they did come after us, it was obviously pandering. And it wasn't an organic reach. A lot of the times they would try to buy ad space on Latina magazine, for example, to promote a movie. Latina magazine, I don't know if it's still in existence right now, but none of the Latinas I knew were reading Latina magazine. I was reading Elle magazine. I was part of the general market, but never being spoken to as general market.
Right.
And so I think right now what is happening is extremely important for Latinos. I think it shows we are a swing voter and we need to be paid attention to. We can no longer be ignored because the election will lose unless it has Latinos voting for the candidate. And the beauty of it is that we do not stay loyal to Dems or to Republicans. And I know that probably sounds like not good. As a Democratic candidate, I actually think it's important. We've been ignored for far too long, and it gives us power.
Well, I think also when you look at the broader electorate, there is so much data about the nuance of white voters. The fact that we can track, white college educated women versus white women who have a high school degree. Why? Well, we know why, but the answer that we don't have nuanced data about any other set of people, any other demographic in this country is racism.
Yeah.
And
yes,
I think what we need to see from anyone running for office is that you have to treat every demographic, every voting bloc with dignity and nuance if you want to win.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I just also have to ask you, because I remember talking about this a lot when you were leaving the state and dealing with all the gerrymandering. Didn't the Republicans in Texas gerrymander largely, if not solely, to capture the Latinx vote and keep it?
They gerrymandered in favor of the Latino Republican vote. And I think they thought that that was the vote that they were going to get to keep. And I think they're realizing right now in real time that that doesn't look like it's going to stick. And we knew that. I mean, we argued for that continuously. And I think right now we also have a situation where we are going to get a lot of first-time voters, not because they're eligible by age, because we know a lot of Latinos don't vote. That's just a fact. I think we're going to start to see the change. I think that we are getting much more educated, especially with what is taking place across the country. And we are beginning to see that it actually does matter. It is important. And I feel like the narrative is changing. I do have friends that have big platforms that are on the extreme far left. And I have watched them in the past advocate for not voting at all, which is crazy to me. Because they're looking solely, because they're looking solely at the presidential election and how it's not going to change if they're in California, or it's not going to change if they're in Texas in terms of, having a say. And I think what they are starting to see and starting to understand is that down ballot is really what matters, and that is what impacts our local communities. And so, I think I think some good things, although horrific, are coming out of what's taking place.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that more broadly. And, we're recording this in the middle of February, so we've seen horrific things from ICE. We have, there's just untold horrors going on in the country right now. I want to know your perspective on why do you think Latinos are abandoning Trump, at least in this cycle?
Sure. I mean, I definitely think it has to do with immigration. I think that when it comes to the Latino vote, and if they voted in favor for Trump based on immigration, which we know that Latinos have voted based on immigration. In fact, we know that when candidates have avoided the immigration discussion, that has not boded well with Latino voters, specifically in Texas. I'm not talking about California. I think that is a completely different situation there. But what happened is that Trump promised that he was going to, deport rapists and criminals, the worst of the worst. And I think that along with conservative values for the most part, especially here in the state of Texas, they leaned that way. Witnessing what we are witnessing now and knowing that 75% of detainees do not have criminal records, and watching no due process, watching ICE come inside, kick down doors, aggressively take people just off the street during school car lines. I mean, it has been horrendous.
Including 5-year-olds.
Including 5-year-olds. And just based off of the color of their skin. We're watching U.S. citizens get detained. And while for some of us, we knew that that was where we were headed, I think for some people, they really believed that there was going to be some sort of, the truth being told, and they're witnessing that it's a lie. And that really what's clear and evident to me is that they want to get rid of our community. I don't know. I don't have any other way to explain what's happening.
Yeah, total erasure of the community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know that thing where you get an amazing pair of shoes at a really great price and want to tell everyone about it? Yeah, so do we. Here at Designer Shoe Warehouse, we'll give you something to brag about. Like the latest styles from brands you love, or the trends everyone's obsessing over, or shoes that make you feel like, well, you. So go ahead, show off a little. Find shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. Head to your DSW store or DSW.com today. DSW, let us surprise you.
I guess when we look at this special election, do you see the influence of Trump in that special election and the outcome of that special election?
No, I mean, he did endorse the Republican candidate in that election. That didn't matter, which has had a lot of weight in past campaigns. And in this one, we saw that did not matter. Trump won in that district by 17 points. So while we saw the swing voter, we saw the Latino voter, which is what I wanted to highlight today, but also we saw suburban white women vote against Trump. And so I think, the Republican Party is in for a really rude awakening. We are also watching from the Republican Party completely deteriorate our public school system here in Texas.
Which I know is something that you've spoken about as a state rep.
Yes. And moms are not going to stand for that. There's a lot of people still angry. In fact, the Democratic candidate, Taylor, he mentioned that as he was door knocking, that was the consistent complaint, was the deterioration of our public school system. And so I think that is going to, be reflective of the entire state, not just that specific district.
I mean, one of my takeaways from this conversation is that it's not just immigration, it's not just the economy, it's not just one issue, that this is an extremely sophisticated voting bloc with really sophisticated trends in how they vote, and we need to treat them accordingly.
Yes. And I think one important part that I left out, I can't even believe I left it out, and it's probably because what we're watching in terms of ICE is consuming my mind. But also the economy. We it's getting harder and harder to afford groceries. I mean, we're close to up to 30% increase on products and services, including groceries, and not to mention, rents going up. I mean, it's really, challenging to just stay afloat right now. We have credit card debt that is increasing. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this conversation, Latinos really care about kitchen economics. So now not only do you have them coming into your kitchen and snatching you up, but what he promised in terms of the economy being cheaper is not taking place. Now, I do have this theory. When Trump was first elected, we saw COVID. And during COVID, we did see the distribution of money into our homes with the stimulus checks.
Mm-hmm.
We also watched the government increase the unemployment check amount. It went from like $400 a week to $600 a week, which was crazy to me because we weren't going anywhere. So why do you need the extra $200, when the country isn't functioning and we can't buy things, which is why we saw online sales increase like crazy. And then another reason why we saw the stock market increase like crazy, there was too much liquidity in the market. And a lot of people felt well off. And I do believe that they attributed that to Trump. Now, what happens when you dump a lot of money into the economy is then you have inflation that occurs. That is just part of the thing. No money is free. Those stimulus checks are costing us, and that's that increase that we're paying on our groceries. Mm-hmm. I'm sure if people understood this properly, we would just give those, I don't know how much it was, $2,000, $3,000 checks, I think, per child, back because they're costing us so much. We are in 2026 and we are still seeing the impact. Now, what happened when Biden came into office, immediately the stock market started to tank. We had a crash. We watched interest rates climb up to new levels because we were trying to make up for all of the inflation that was taking place and the low interest rates that we had during Trump, which is another thing. People were buying houses. I mean, people were doing all kinds of stuff. And I think overall, people felt well off. And they attributed Trump being president to feeling rich, where it was just a culmination of what happened with COVID. And then we started to see the decline in the economy. He comes back and completely runs off of lowering prices and getting things back to maybe how they were when he was president on his first term, when really it's just an illusion. We'll never get there again. That was an anomaly.
Yeah, I mean, prices are not going to come down. As I've learned from you, when prices come down, that's a huge red flag. It's wages that have to go up.
Yeah. And we're seeing the increase. Like people are saying, oh, inflation is coming down. Yes, it is coming down, but it is not decreasing. It is coming down, but the inflation that we incurred in all the previous years is still being applied to our groceries. It's just not increasing as fast as it was in 2021, 2022, 2023.
Yeah, I wish there was a way to have an extremely complex conversation about the economy on a national level to be like, okay, let's talk about why things were actually stable under Biden versus Trump term 2, why tariffs are not beneficial for anyone, but it's really hard to have, and we're doing our best at Investies to help
we are
people
doing
understand
our best.
What's going on. I know that political predictions are like not cute, but I do want to ask you, going into the midterms later this year, not what's going to happen, but what change do you want to see going into the midterms?
At the core, the change that I want to see is an increase in Latinos going out to vote. honestly, I have respect for Latinos that vote Republican. I here's the thing, and I've been asked this before. That's who you want. That's who you want. We're all going to suffer the consequences of whoever you vote for. And we have to get through that. And we have somebody that is not following the Constitution, is breaking laws, is a criminal. And we are where we are because they voted for that candidate. But ultimately, what I want to see is just our demographic voting. And I would like to also see our priorities being ironed out clearly, not just what we're fighting against, but what we want to fight for. And I would like to see normal people getting inspired and running for something, anything. Just run for something. This idea that a candidate has to be polished and button up and has to be perfect, that's the positive thing that Trump brought to the table. I honestly don't think that I would be an elected official if it wasn't for Trump. I really, truly believe that. I think that he has, I really, truly believe that. I think that he has completely changed the face of politicians. And I think that is important because we are currently watching their masks come off and their true colors. And we are learning that you will not find the working class in those files. You will not find immigrants in those files. Who we are watching come out of those files, which most of it's been redacted, but we have, thoughts or ideas, is not us. And it's time for us to take control of our country. And so when we see someone like Taylor Remmett, working class, blue collar, president of his union, airplane mechanic, just a normal guy saying very simple things like we need to work on the economy in our state, I think that's what we need. And I hope that that is what comes out of this election cycle, that we see more normal people become inspired by those that are running. We're witnessing normal people run.
Yeah, I think that's really, really inspiring. I definitely think that, I have friends who are like, I didn't vote. And I'm like, then you don't get to talk about politics. I'm sorry. But if you're not going to participate, then your opinion doesn't matter. And I think that that's true for anyone who decides to abstain from voting.
Are those friends coming around? Do you think they're going to vote in the midterms?
By and large, my friends, I'm in Oakland, California. My friends lean extremely far left. The vast majority of them know that we got to vote. I have one friend who breaks my heart, who told me recently, I will never vote for a candidate that I don't believe in. And the way I feel about that is tough shit. I might have to vote for Gavin Newsom in 2028, and he might not be my ideal candidate for president. But one, you're voting against fascism. You're not just voting for a person. You're voting for dignity for your fellow man. That's not just a person. And also, we can't pretend that voting is just voting for the president. Like you were saying before, it's about the down ballot power that you have in your local community to affect change. And I just, it incenses me when people say, I'm going to sit this out. Because I feel like, especially with progressives, they're looking for a perfection in a candidate that doesn't exist. And I could go on and on and on about this, but I feel like that kind of perfection, it just reinforces some of the most toxic ideas in our society.
1000%.
There's no such thing as a perfect candidate. What the hell? No, your partner isn't perfect. Your best friend isn't perfect. Why would a politician be perfect? I don't understand.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. The lack of tolerance for our disagreements or the differences between us, it blows my mind on both sides. We have to hold both sides accountable, the far right and the far left. Yeah.
And I just want to say too,
too.
yeah, I could go on and on, but the vast majority of people who say that are white men who masquerade as extremely progressive, but really what they're doing is saying, I don't really want to vote for Kamala Harris because she's a woman. That's what's underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like you have the most power in the entire country. Like, be uncomfortable for 5 seconds, tick a box for someone you don't really like. Who cares about your discomfort? It's more uncomfortable to watch your neighbor be hauled away by ICE than it is for you to fill in a bubble. Like, get real. That's how I feel about that.
Yes.
Speaking of discomfort, you did mention the Epstein files. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I think so. I think I have to talk about it,
Okay.
at least so that our listeners can, hear about it, because it's my understanding that not everybody is paying attention, and I understand it's hard. Me personally, I have trauma as a child, and I am being triggered daily. So I get it. But also, thinking about me as a child, we cannot afford for adults to look away just because they're triggered. We need those adults to step up and lean in and protect children from these monsters, and women as well, young women.
I'm curious, as a politician, as someone who serves in public office, are you ingesting all of the files? Are you reading as much as you possibly can?
Unfortunately, yes. I can't help it. I just can't help it. It's been hard. It feels like I'm having almost an existential crisis. Like, I mean, I have heard about Pizzagate. It's not like I'm new to conspiracy theories. I have friends that are extreme, as we were just talking about, and they have tried sharing these things in the past, and I've listened. And I always am like, well, where's the proof? Like, I want to see the proof. And so, yeah, we're looking at the proof now.
We have talked about this offline, and I want to talk about it here. There is, I think, discomfort. There's a tension in seeing the global elite participating in basically a pedophilic sex trafficking ring, people who have the most economic power in our country. There's tension between that and being invested in the stock market, being invested in some of these people's companies. Like, you might have Tesla stock. A lot of people do. Elon Musk is in the files. I'm just curious about how you, as an investor and as someone who, feels deeply traumatized looking at these files, and as someone who I think is really good at holding two truths at once, how do you reconcile that?
Well, it's not completely reconciled. And I do feel like I'm going through an existential crisis some days. And I still think that I still have conviction that we should be participating in the market. I think that it is important for us to learn about the economy. I think that it's important for us to make sure that our portfolios are taken care of, maintained, as well as our retirement accounts, which includes all of that. But I also think that there needs to be massive change. We recently heard a politician say that if they exposed all the redacted names, that our entire country would collapse. And I wouldn't be opposed to that. Actually, not that I want the country to collapse. I do not want the country to collapse. But I think that we should face the repercussions of these men and remove them from their power. They need to be removed from their power immediately.
Yes, 100%.
And I have faith that there are good people that can step into these roles. And the people may not look as polished or whatever as a high-level executive or a high-level political candidate, but they know better on what is right for the community. I think good people exist. I haven't lost my faith completely. And yeah, I'm not going to lie, Eliza. It has been hard. It has been hard.
I heard someone say the other day something that really resonated with me, which is like, I think it was the comedian Josh Johnson who's on The Daily Show. He was like, what's cool? The vast majority of us aren't in the files. And I was like, that's true. But it does make me think about like, if all that idea that like our whole country would collapse, it's like, would it collapse or would it be chaotic and we would be able to put people in power who have integrity? Is that the stance of someone who's scared to lose that power?
Mm-hmm. A scarcity mindset, right? We can apply
100%.
Scarcity mindset to that. I'm with you. I think that we can replace those people. I believe they are replaceable. There's no way that only evil people are intelligent. You know what I mean? Like, I don't believe that. I think, but whatever, we have a government right now that's protecting them. And I think those people should also be removed for, what is that crime when you aiding and abetting?
A criminal sex ring?
Yeah. I mean, yes. Even those politicians that are currently protecting the ones that have actually done something. I mean, we have people that haven't participated and are protecting these people as well. I think they should go down too.
I agree with you. I want to end with a question for you, which is, like often we talk about practical advice on the show, and I don't want to be super cynical, like, well, how do you invest right now when we're talking about all the disturbing things that are in the Epstein files? But like, I guess I am going to kind of ask you that question, which is like, what are you doing right now as someone whose money is in this market?
Yeah. I want for all of us to have seed money for whatever that may be, whatever that is. I have watched so many of my students that have gone through Wealth Warrior, the course, have investments and then sell out and have seed money to buy a house and rent that house, whatever it is that they want to do that's going to generate more money. I think that we need, and we also should have money to, utilize for emergencies or utilize when we retire, of course. We obviously know that we cannot depend on anyone else to take care of us. Right now, we are watching a pretty volatile time. The date today is Thursday, February 12th, and we watched the stock market drop drastically today. And as I'm observing it, the only thing I can think of is we are going to have a massive opportunity as we watch the volatility in the market. I'm opening up the app right now just to share how much we've dropped today. Almost 2% in the S&P 500. That's a lot. For one day, that is pretty significant. 2.26% on the NASDAQ. That is significant. I think that there's going to be an opportunity for us to participate in a down market. I'm not doing anything right now. I'm trying to observe. We still don't know why the market is dropping so drastically in one day. I've been watching the market all day, and the only thing I can think of is that maybe on Friday we have a big report for inflation data, is that maybe the whales, which are the biggest people that are invested in companies and publicly traded companies, already know what inflation is going to look like. And they are moving money before us regular folks. And so I'm observing right now. I'm not making any moves. I want to see the market hit a floor before I start buying in. And you guys know I always share what I do. When it's time to potentially sell, I will share. Like, we're at new all-time highs. You may consider checking out your portfolio if you've been invested for a relatively long time and pull some money out. And when I feel like we've hit a floor, I also, share that I am personally buying. I think it's important to have these types of conversations. We don't have them enough. We have an entire ring of powerful men that have them on a daily basis. Yeah.
So not making any sudden moves is what I'm hearing you saying.
Yes. Observing right now. There's too much news. It's not a time to panic either. It's definitely not a time to panic. So just being observant and watching the market. And you can always tune into Investies for the latest economic news.
Absolutely. And check the Investies Instagram feed, which always has daily updates on the market.
Yes. At Investies Podcast.
Linda, it's always a pleasure checking in with you. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Of course. Thank you, Eliza. Thank you for listening to Investies Podcast. I'm your host, Linda Garcia. If you enjoy the content that we are producing here today, I want to ask you to please do me a huge favor. If you can take a few moments of your day, head over to the podcast player, rate, review, make sure you're subscribed to Investies. That really helps to amplify our platform here on Investies. A special thank you to the team, Asia Simpson, Eliza Smith, and Jacob Winnick.